Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Houston Element Podcast. My name is Missy, and I'm your host. And today, I have the lovely pleasure, a rare opportunity to sit down with a very seasoned professional in production. Okay, worked all over. Okay, we have today Mr. Mark Grady.
Hello. My name is Mark Grady. How are you? Nice to be here. Thank you for having me. So, I'm excited. It's my first podcast to do, so I'm a little excited. So
Wonderful, man. And well, it's a pleasure to have someone like yourself, on the podcast.
Yeah,
so
it's cool. It's gonna be fun. So, anything you want to know about me?
Yeah. So for starters, can you give us a little brief, description about yourself and what you do?
Sure. I'm a state union stagehand. I work for T.H.E Local 51 here in Houston and Galveston area. I've been working in production for theaters since the mid 90s. Started off at a very young age in high school, and working professionally, as extra money in high school and stuff like that. And I've my specialty is, I guess, you kind of become, you're supposed to be a jack of all trades, and but I tend to get pigeonholed into electrics because I'm very good at doing the electrics lighting portion of theater and stuff. So my current job is I'm the assistant master electrician, or assistant head electrician. Sorry, we've had a title change there, and a lighting board programmer for the Houston Grand Opera. That's one of my jobs. I'm also the head of our organizing for the local, for the union. I'm also the head of the training for our local. So, and I'm also on our committee for our mutual aid. So I've got lots of jobs, but my main job, the one that actually pays, the other jobs are kind of volunteer, but the one that pays is I'm the head electrician, or assistant head electrician for the Houston Grand Opera.
Wow, that's incredible, man. Yeah. Now, I envy you because that sounds like a very exciting job, but I also don't envy you because of that input list a little bit.
Yeah, it's when we're working in production, and it's weird because all of the, some people can paint you anything, some people can sing you anything, some people can build you anything. For me, the lighting part and electricity and all that just is natural, and I don't have to think about it. I just do it. So for me, that part of the job and the programming, it just comes natural to me. So I don't really have to. It's not a lot of extra work. So, and I'm pretty good at it. So it pays the bills.
Yeah.
So it allows me to do other things. So that's kind of the cool thing. And I've been doing it, like I said, for a long time. I've been a lighting designer for 25 years, stuff like that. So, done everything from rock concerts to ballets, to operas, to musical theater. It's an awesome life. My parents, my dad wanted me to be an engineer. And he was like, you're never going to make it, you're going to be starving your whole life because you're going to be do theater. Well, I'm from Amarillo, Texas, where there's not a lot of opportunities to do that. So if I would have stayed there, he's right. I would have. So, I'm fortunate. I moved to Philadelphia and spent 10 years there and was very, very successful there and had a lot of fun and joined the union there. And then I came by here. So, it's cool. It's a lot of fun.
Wow. What a journey, man. Yeah. And so you said you first got introduced to production and lighting electrical in high school.
High school.
So what started?
Actually, middle school. I started in 8th grade. My sister was in 9th grade. My sister was 2 years ahead of me, so she was a sophomore in high school, and she was acting, and so I was hanging out, and I was like, oh, I want to do that. So I took a theater class and ended up doing a lighting, and I was like, done. So as a coming in freshman year of high school, I started doing lighting, and I told, that's when I decided what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I've never changed. Most people will change. They wanted to be in a band, so they come and they play music, and then it doesn't actually work out for them, so then they end up backstage, or they were an actor and they end up backstage. I've actually always wanted to do what I'm doing now. So, it's really cool. It's not a lot of experience that people have. So I went to college for a second, and it just wasn't right. So I left. So just went in the world and started doing it. So yeah, lots of fun, lots of hard work, and there's been lots of times where I didn't make a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
For a few years there, I'd make like $3,000, a year doing this. So I'd have to have other jobs doing it. Just a grind, and you just keep on going, keep on going. You got to be passionate about it, and you got to make sure you want to do it, because it can be hard.
That is the truth. The musicians, some people will say, don't be a rock star, don't be a musician, don't be an actor, you're going to starve. Well, the people behind the scenes, we're right there with you. You know what I'm saying? We're right there on the front lines. We're making sure we're switching out your inputs, your mics, everything, in the middle, just to make sure that your show goes on. So we're right there with you.
Yep. And, fortunately, lighting's not as bad as sound, because when something goes wrong in lighting, most people don't know it. Mm-hmm. But the second there's feedback, everybody turns and looks.
Yeah.
The second something doesn't work, everything turns and looks. And, it's just, that's unfortunate. I think that's probably why I stayed away from audio. I did a little, I could do it.
Yeah.
I could do a little bit, but I don't have that good of an ear. I'm mostly deaf in one ear. So it's just not something, but man, it's all the same thing. Lighting and audio, it's signal flow.
Yeah.
It's mostly the same thing. If you understand signal flow, you'll understand lighting. Mm-hmm. There's some different gear, there's different gear and stuff like that, but distance from object to equipment, all those things matter in both areas. So there's a lot of translations. So I joke, one of my best friends who is in Phoenix, he was the head of audio at the Walnut Street Theater when I was working there, and his name is Ryan Peavy. He is not related to anybody that has with the PV, like the audio. Mm-hmm. But I used to introduce him as my assistant all the time just to make him mad, because according to the IATSE International, the audio is a sub-department of lighting. Mm-hmm. So I always tell it, and that always pisses the audio guys off. So, but it's fun, we're a big family, and, you can kind of rib each other and stuff like that. So, you just gotta have a little bit of fun when you're doing the work, and otherwise you're working long hours and it's not worth it. So
absolutely. So as an LD or lighting design technician, and you also said assistant master electrician,
assistant head electrician.
So what are your typical kind of responsibilities and duties at an average work gig?
So, as an electrician, and especially when you're like head of department, or when the assistant. So, like as an assistant, when the head can't do things, then I will pick up that slack for him, and when he has to step away, I will fill in. But as your head of department, a lot of times what you'll do is you'll manage the people, and that's really what it is. I was the head electrician for the Super Bowl halftime when it was here. In 2017 for Super Bowl 51 with the Lady Gaga. Mm-hmm. And there was, eventually at one point I had 65 people on my crew, and my job was to manage those people. I didn't do much of like actually turning a wrench or anything like that, but I had to manage where everybody was going, think 4 steps ahead, because this group's getting done over here. So once they're done over here, where do they need to go next? Because we got to be efficient. We got to get this done, right? So that's really, as your head of department, that's what you're going to do. And the assistant at the opera programs a lighting console. So I spent a lot of time behind a desk programming lights, somebody talking in my ear, telling me what they want. There's various different ways to program. Sometimes someone tells you exactly what they want, or sometimes they're like, oh, can you give me this? And then you have to go and do it for them. So, you kind of have to know how to do both of those things very well. So that's kind of what but it's reading plots, implementing the plots, figuring out how much power is needed for each light and each rig, and what the requirements are. This is before you even set foot in the theater. Mm-hmm. And then once you set foot in the theater, then it's working, getting the list. You have the list to distribute to people. Okay, this is where I need these cables. You supervise the hanging of it, putting up, and without fail, you've always got to help somebody, because in this industry there's always somebody new. And so you got to be able to teach them. You got to be able to work with them. You can't get frustrated. You got to, you know, I'll teach you along. Let's come on. Let's do this. We can do this. You know, and you got to teach them how to focus a light, how to hang a light, how to do it all safely, how to put cable on the pipe, on truss, you know, so it doesn't fall and hurt somebody. So, you know, there's always something new, and you're learning something new every day because it's always constantly changing.
Oh yes. Oh yes. And now I'd love to pick your brain, especially about the lighting stuff, because I mean, I've worked as a stagehand, you know, for a few years, and then I had to retire because of injuries. But you know, but audio is where my main focus is, you know, sitting. But I've always heard some LDs and some engineers, they're like, oh, I'll never do lighting. And they'll say, oh, I'll never do audio. And so what was it about lighting for you that, you know, really it stuck out to you? What do you think it helped you make it feel so natural as a skill set?
I don't know. It just kind of felt like I started doing it. I remember one of the first things when I started really doing lighting in high school, my teacher, she said, okay, you're going to do lighting. She was trying to get me to learn everything, but she really didn't have the background to teach it all. She had background, but not like expertise. And so she was like, okay, I want you to go in the theater. You pick a song and you write cues to it. And this is, you know, mid 90s. There's the lighting rigs in the schools then are not what they are now. There's nowhere near. So, you know, so I'm in there and I'm programming on this old console. By old, it was new at the time, and it was computerized, which it would do. You could program one scene at a time, and you could write cues on it. So it was amazing, right? And so I wrote. So I was like, okay. So she said, pick whatever song you said. So I went, okay. So I picked a Meatloaf song.
Nice.
One of the longest songs that I could do, and I just sit there and started. And at the time, this is right when I Would Do Anything for Love came out. And so I wrote a whole like lighting like thing, building and it, you know, a whole design just with the lights where it's building. There's nobody on stage and the lights are just changing and flowing with the music. And that's when it was like, I can do this. This is like, I put it to the same instance when Picasso picked up a brush. You know, it just felt natural. This is what I can do the rest, but this feels natural to me, and that's what I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. So I definitely, that's when it started for me. And, you know, I remember after I was in college for, like I said, a second, I went to Texas Tech University for a semester. They made me take all these acting classes, and I'm like, I don't want to act. I want to be in the theater. I want to be working in the theater. I want to do lighting. This is what I came to school to do. I want to do it. I want to do it. And they said, well, after my first semester, I said, okay, I took all the classes you told me I had to take. When do I set foot in the theater? Well, that you won't be able to do that till your junior year. And it's a 5-year program. And you have to commit 2 summers to their program also. And I was like, no. I basically told my guidance counselor, I was like, F you, and I left. So, you know, I was working in a venue in Amarillo, Texas, at the Amarillo Civic Center in their theater. And the theater is 2,500 seats all on one level. So like think of the Hobby Center, which is roughly about the same size. All the people that could go in the Hobby Center or Jones Hall or any theaters in any of the big theaters in Houston, but put it all on one level instead of multi-tiered. So it goes back a block. And the lighting console was a block away from the stage.
Jeez.
But it had a 60-foot proscenium opening, and, you know, I could hang lights. And so I would hang lights in there, and I remember once I'm doing this one-man show for this farm and ranch convention, and this guy is going to sit on a log downstage. And I started, you know, I quickly just focused some lights on it. And I remember, and so was like live designing the thing as he's doing this one-man speak, like he's speaking and doing poetry and singing, you know, type thing, you know, around the campfire. And I created a campfire coming out of the footlights and all this kind of stuff. And I look up and I'm like, oh, the way I had focused the lights purely by accident, I'm never going to be able to recreate this. It looked like what the Amarillo sky looked like at sunset.
Oh, wow.
Which I don't know if you've ever seen the sky in Amarillo, but there's a lot of very intense pinks and blues and ambers and like when they do a lot of sunset films, like filming of sunsets in movies, they'll often come to Amarillo because it's flat. You can see the sunset for miles, right? So 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 I created this thing. I was like, this is it. Like this is what I'm gonna do, and it was, and that's the thing is, with lighting, a lot of people are of the thought now that you've got to be, people have to notice the lighting. It's not necessarily that. You're enhancing the show, right? If you're distracting from the show, are you doing the show?
No.
Like, are you part of the show?
Yeah.
Theater is a team effort, and we can create these things for people to see and create this art, and like the best thing in the world is when a singer hits a note, or there's a note that's hit, and it kind of just easing in, and the lighting builds at the same time, and people get those goosebumps.
Yeah, like just now.
And, see, right? As I'm talking about it happens, right? Working with the director, and we were doing a show out at Miller. We're doing Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat with Theater Under the Stars at Humphrey School, and the director was like, and there's this part where he's in the prison, Joseph's in the prison, and I did this thing where it just went to these blues, and then the background like popped the stars out, and she was like, whoa, I got the chills, and I was like, yeah, it's good, right? And that was the, it was all, everything came together in those moments, and that happens so often in theater. We're lucky because we're taking somebody out of their normal world. And that's why during COVID, it was so hard for people, because they couldn't go to the theater. People are dealing with their stress in their lives on a daily basis. We're not curing cancer, but what we are doing is we're taking people out of their reality, taking them into a different place for a couple hours where they could not think about those things, and then they could just enjoy it. And that is, the lighting, doing lighting for that. That's what it's about for me. It's not about, look at the cool lighting I could do. I want to be able to light and just really be a part of that team and make people, enjoy theater. So, yeah.
I love that the way that you explained that. And I mean, and that's how I feel too. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got in this industry, and like, I can't stagehand anymore because I've had surgeries. Like, I'm not, you know what I'm saying? But, if I could go back, if I was physically healthy, I'd go back in a heartbeat, even if, just because I enjoyed what I did. And some people are like, oh man, I stagehand one time and it was awful. I'm like, well, it wasn't for you. You don't have passion for it. Me, I could be outside and I'm sweating, pouring sweat, but I'll carry a truss with a big old smile on my face. I'm like, oh, we're gonna build some stuff.
Yeah.
Because I just love what I do,
Yeah, it's interesting because people fall into different niches in the market. Some people love to do the industrial stuff. People love to do festivals. People love to do live theater. People love to do, work in churches and stuff like that. People like to just install this stuff. Like there's in this entertainment world, there's all these different things that you can still do and still be involved in. You say injuries, and it's a tragic thing. A lot of people find out what the kind of money we make, and as a union stagehand, we make pretty good money. My rate's anywhere from $30 an hour to $50, and it's like, well, why do you make so much money? Minimum wage, that's way more than minimum wage. Yeah, but we're on call, right? They're paying us to make sure that we're available when they need us. And we have a limited lifespan, right? It's like football players make a lot of money because they're beat up. Stagehands are beat up. We often don't have great health care. With our union, we actually have health care that's paid for by our employers, but a lot of the non-represented, stagehands, they don't get those things. We get 10% for our health care. We get 10% into our pension. We also have like a vacation. We get like 3% in vacation. Most non-represented stagehands, they get none of that stuff. And on top of it, they're all 1099. So they pay the employer's portion of the taxes. It's hard to
Yeah.
You know, and at a lesser rate. You know, they're
Yeah.
making $15-16 an hour.
Oh, yeah.
And it's as an organizer and organizing theaters, this is something I talk with people all the time about. And they're like, well, it's Texas. We don't have a choice. This is what we're going to do. Or this is our only choice. It's right to work. Okay. Well, hold on. Let me ask you a question. What does right to work mean? Right? I ask you that question. What does it mean?
All I know is that Texas is an at will of an employment state, meaning that they can let you go for any and if no but reason whatsoever kind of thing.
Every state in the union is at will. Unless you have a CBA. You know what a CBA is?
Mm-mm.
Collective bargaining agreement. That's what unions work under. So the CBA is a contract that they work, and that gives and mostly what's built into those contracts is ways to have progressive discipline, to where you're just not fired because they don't like you. They got to have a reason, you know, all those kinds of stuff. So there's that, but there's right to work, which often means that, you know, a lot of people think right to work means that means that it's at will. Most people think at will, or right to work is at will. And what right to work means is that non-union stagehands have the right to work under union contracts. They don't necessarily have to be members. So it's actually all the power lies in the employee, not the employer. But we're taught as Texans from a young age. This was me. We're taught opposite of that, and so they feel like they can't get the things that they need, healthcare, you know, because you know we beat our bodies up carrying speakers. You know, things happen on stage with big heavy things. We're moving massive things around, and you often can get hurt, and then you're working without healthcare. And sometimes you're working for an employer who I'll take care of you. Don't file a workers' comp claim. I'll take care of you. We'll help you out for 3 weeks, and then we're not going to help you out anymore. And then you're messed up. Like there's nothing you could do, and you're out. You know you no longer have a livelihood at all. So you know that's often the things that we have to face as stagehands is how are we going to have healthcare? How are we going to you don't see a lot of 70-year-old stagehands.
Yeah.
Right? You actually, a lot of them, even at 60 are so beaten up and broken that they can hardly get out of bed.
Yeah.
Because they've been doing this for so long.
Right.
And it's a thing. So we got to, universal health care would solve it all, but nobody wants to do that because, various reasons. But, there's ways to the only recourse we have is to band together, form a unit, and join and be a union and say these are what we want to work here. We don't want to pay your portion of taxes. We want you to pay you're telling us when to go to work and when not to. Most people that are working as 1099, they're misclassified. They shouldn't be working as 1099 workers because the employer is telling them when to come to work, when to leave, and they can't bill on the back end for more time, right? I'm only going to give you this rate. Oh, no. If I'm an independent contractor, I decide the rate and how much I'm going to work for. So, because you want to include all those things, healthcare, what that healthcare costs. Our healthcare, we get 10%, but that's not enough at this point. Our healthcare is $1,900 a month. So if they pay 10%, the employer pays 10% right now. So 10%, to get $1,900 a month, you would need to make how much per month just to get coverage for your healthcare? That's a lot, right?
Yeah.
So, healthcare costs are just rising and rising, and we're just we don't get sick time, so people go to work sick. They go to work hurt. Your back's a little tweaked. Oh, my back's a little tweaked, but I got to work because rent's due, in 5 days. So I've got to go to work. So you go to work and then you mess up your back more. This is the story we hear all the time with everybody.
Oh yeah.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
And, oftentimes, the people cheering are cheering for the people on stage. They often forget about the people behind. Sometimes they're cheering for us too. We know that. But, the stagehands are often the people that are forgotten. In some of the theaters, they've got union actors, they've got union musicians, but no way on the stagehands. It's like, what?
Yeah, like a lot of people think that just fairies come and just wave their wand, and then all of a sudden the artist comes out, and it's like you were saying earlier, you know who gave you that goosebumps? It's like, yeah, old boy or old girl hit those notes, but you know who set up that video, that lighting? Where's the signal coming from? Oh yeah, that's right. You know,
Yeah.
you're welcome.
Yeah, that's right. It's like I tell everybody, my buddy, the guy that I was talking about, who I would say would be my assistant all the time, just to get under his skin. He would say, you know, they don't call it a lighticle. And I was like, well, maybe they need to. You know, it's you know, without amplification of the singers, and without the scenery that's moving on stage, or you know, the amplification of the drums, and you know, the band, you know, they're playing for, you know, 100 people in a small room, maybe acoustic, you know, like, and 100 people would be pretty tough to play like that. Even with 100 people, you need a microphone and a set of speakers.
Yeah.
At the very least. And then if it's dark, you're going to need somebody to put lights on.
You know, and you know, especially with the lady performers that want to come out in platform shoes and heels and things like that. You want to stand in the grass in those shoes?
That's right.
Oh! You like okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're happy to help.
Yep.
But I'm glad that you brought it up. You know, is that, you know, the stagehands and everyone, you know, back of house, you know, front of house, you know, those technicians, they don't get the appreciation and the respect they deserve, you know, kind of thing. I will say this though, I think the engineers, the techs get a little more respect. I've experienced it. You can tell me yourself. You know, you put on that walkie, and all of a sudden people think that, you know, the president or the first lady is walking down the hall.
Yeah.
You take that walkie off, and then they're like, stagehands need to eat by the trash cans.
Yeah.
And I've told somebody one time, I looked them dead in the face, and I said, I don't pay my taxes to eat next to trash.
Yeah.
And he just.
Yeah. One of the things that I'll never forget this. This was in probably 1998, 1999. I was doing a show for a pretty big country star. And I'll never forget. So two of them that I worked for. Story one, a friend of mine is the caterer, and he's working. We're doing a loadout for him, and he made sure that that you know, the stagehands had the same food he was eating, and all this kinds of stuff, and all this, you know, took real good care of us, ate with us, all this kinds of stuff. And his son got sick during the tour, and the son was a huge fan of the country artist. And when he said, he was like, "You go home, take care of your kid." By the time he got home, the star had sent like a tour jacket signed and all this stuff for the kid, just to make his day brighter,
Aww.
help pay for the hospital bills and all this kinds of stuff. And, you know, took care of his people, like really took care of his people. Major star. I'm talking major star.
Uh-huh.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I don't want to give away his name, but, you know, somebody who's I'd put A-list, right?
Mm-hmm.
Country star in the 90s. Not Garth Brooks, but you know, just below that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So another guy we're doing a loadout for, and I will give you his name because this guy, actually two of them, Clay Walker, Travis Tritt. We're doing Travis Tritt, and when Travis Tritt's doing so most of them performed in our Coliseum, which is like the where the hockey rink is and stuff. We put Homoso down and build a stage on top of that, and it'd hold 9,000 people, something like that. Maybe not 9, probably 6 or 7, because it's Amarillo, Texas. But the theater holds 2,500 seats. Both of these people are performing in a smaller house, 2,500 seats. They could probably sell those out. They're not going to sell out the big place. So Travis Tritt, there's a ramp that comes down, had to have a van with the door on both sides so he could get out of the bus directly into the van, drive down to the bottom of the ramp, which is 100 yards, open the door so he could walk up the steps onto the stage. And then the other one and on top of that, no stagehands could be in his sight when he did that.
I've heard of those artists.
And you're like, who are you?
Yeah. Yeah. like
you're not like, you're nobody.
Yeah, there's been gigs where I had no idea even how to spell the person's name. Like, didn't know if it was a picture or a word.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, no stage hands in the back. And I'm like, as if I would mob you.
Right. we're other, right? We're not worthy.
Right.
You know, it's
right.
like, oh man, this is not how you treat your people if you want them to take care of you. You
no.
know? And another one, you know, and Clay Walker, you know, it was kind of the same thing. Now, he was going through some stuff that nobody knew about. But this is before, like, he's got MS, and we know that now, but back then we didn't. So it was kind of the same thing. Hindsight, we know why he was doing it, because he didn't want to get out that he was sick.
Right.
So, you know, those three different scenarios are three entirely different things. But, you know, when you find out that, oh, he was sick, that's why, you know, for years I had this bad taste in my mouth about Clay Walker, because he did the same thing. You can't be around me. You know, I'm just going to walk on stage, walk off stage, and want nobody around me, you know. But he was trying to provide for his family and for his crew by not canceling the show while he was going through this thing. So, you know, you got to have a little respect for those sorts of things. And, you know, Travis Tritt, I'll never listen to a single thing he ever does in my life ever again. And I'll never pay money to see him, because why?
Yeah.
He doesn't respect what I do. So.
Yeah. And now getting back to that specifically about how important respect is in our industry, you know what I'm saying? Because, you know, a successful show is a happy show, you know, a respected team is a happy team kind of thing, you know? And now you have a lot of experience in lighting, so I really want to pick your ear for this kind of thing, you know? My experience when I was stagehanding, and anytime I was put in lighting, because they almost always put the ladies in lighting, and that's a discussion for another time, you know, which I'm like, you know, no worries, right? You know, but I couldn't go a gig without hearing, don't break my data cable. What's going on? Run the cable. Like, what can you tell us from your experience, what if there's the stress from load in, load out that comes with things, or is it just individuals with bad attitudes maybe?
There is a little bit of stress. Sometimes people get stressed out and they take that out in the wrong way, yes. But sometimes people just have problems leading, and they tend to, instead of lead, they tend to just yell. You hear MFers all the time. You hear, come on, you guys are killing me, you know, all this kinds of stuff. You know, sometimes there's people that are new that just don't know. There's also the difference. There's a huge difference on how you roll a cable and how I roll a cable. Do you over under a cable?
I do over under.
No, what? I am an advocate against over undering cable.
Really?
Does it come off the spool that way?
It does not.
But why do you do it?
Because I don't want to get yelled at by the road crew, excuse me.
But if you just ask the question, do you quarter turn or do you over under your cable? Right? So ask the question. Because if it's my rig, you come in and you're don't over under my cable.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to tell you when I see you doing it.
Right.
And then you're going to do it again. But you got to know how to do both ways, right? I want you to quarter turn data cable. You know, over under cable, you know, that data cable has tiny wires in there. And when you're over undering it, you're actually doing this. Quarter turn is just, it's best to do what it naturally wants to do, because you're not going to break the cable in there. You know, I've seen people roll, you know, Cat 5 cable over their arm.
Oh, God. Yeah.
And it's like, don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah. Like Cat 5 and I like telephone, what looks like data, you know, the fiberglass, I always do quarter turn roll, you know.
Now, fiber cable, you really have to do whatever it wants to do, because that one is so fragile, and you know, you can look at that wrong and it's going to break.
Yeah. And then you're going to hear about it.
You know, and I'll never forget, I had this guy that was telling me this story. He had they were pulling this cable, and they had to pull it, and they had to pull something else. So the stagehand was like, "Oh, I'll just tape this other cable to it." So they were using the fiber as pull line, right?
Short disclaimer, don't do that.
Yeah, it's very bad.
I don't care if the Pope told you, don't do that.
So, and it's a 500-foot run of fiber. So then guess what we're doing? We're running the backup again. So we had to do that twice because somebody used it as, we'll see if it works just in case. And guess what? Not at all. Fiber optic, man. It's, it's doing wonders for us, building networks and stuff like that for lighting. But oof, it's fragile. It is fragile.
Oh
so,
my God.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to get back to something you said here for just a second. The women on crew, like, we got to get over this whole women can't do it. Like, we're not. I can introduce you to some women in our local that can outwork most of the men in our local, like, just because they got better work ethic, they can lift more, like, all of these things, like, what makes a good stagehand. These people have the ability to think and to troubleshoot and to do all that. They're good stagehands. They're great stagehands. We got to get past that whole women can't be stagehands things. That's crap.
Yeah.
Some of the best carpenters I've ever seen in my life are women. Just is.
If toasters weren't inanimate objects, but they knew how to work a C-wrench, I would put a toaster to put the truss together. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, your chromosomes don't define your quality as a worker.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because you've been in the industry longer than me, good attitude, safety conscious, team player, preferably speak the same language. That saves some time.
I think the ability to, I think the other thing is the ability to say, I don't know how to do this. Show me.
Ask for help.
Not so I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain things you can fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
And, and if you're in a place where somebody's going to beat up on you because you don't know how to get it done,
mm-hmm.
then you kind of have to weigh that a little bit. But the ability to say, look, I don't want to mess this up. Am I doing this right? That's going to get you somewhere.
Yes.
And I think that's important. Again, yeah, like you said, being a team player, showing up on time, showing up early. Like,
mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many people there. We had a guy who was late to the start of the call, right? Like 10 minutes. We went to coffee 2 hours later. It's a 15-minute coffee. He took 20 minutes. So he's maybe it was 10-minute coffee. And he took 15 minutes. So he took 5 minutes over coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So he's late back from coffee. They fired him. It's
my God.
Get out. You're late all the time,
Yeah.
And he wasn't doing anything. Like, he's standing around with his hands in his pockets. Don't put your hands in your pockets.
Yeah.
That's the best thing you could do, is not put your hands in your pockets.
Oh my God. Yeah.
2 words will change your life as a stagehand. It'll annoy one person, but it could be a good annoy. 2 words. What's next? Every time you get done with something, you ask, what's next? Because eventually somebody's like, I don't have anything. Go sit over there.
Yeah.
All right. When you need me, I'm there. What's next? Right? Those 2 words will change your life.
All right. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's a really good one. And I had just only once did I actually have the road guy tell me, don't ask me that, because, whatever, his football team didn't win that day or something,
yeah.
Whatever. He lost a bet. I don't know. And I was like, okay, no problem. But I just, never put my hand in my pocket. Always stand ready. Have your tools.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God. If you don't bring anything, bring a crescent wrench.
You know what I started doing? I started carrying crescent wrenches, extra crescent wrenches, and people would not inevitably not have their crescent wrench. And you'd be like, well, you got it. We have, like, our work rules, so you get sent home without your tools.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It could be that serious. Like,
yeah.
And especially if you repeatedly do it. So what I started doing is I started carrying extra tools. Oh, I forgot my crescent wrench. Do you have an extra one? I do, but I'm not going to just give it to you. You can rent it from me.
Ooh.
And what I tend to do is, we have a guy in our local who has a charity. It's called Feed the Future Forward, and he writes checks to schools so kids don't have to eat the I don't have enough money for food lunch, which is usually a piece of bread and some cheese and a little water or milk or whatever. So he's feeding kids, and I'll be like, okay, see that guy over there? you must give him $15 by the end of the day. Right? So this $3 crescent wrench, because crescent wrenches are about $3. They could be $6, is going to cost $15. I'm not getting it, but he will take that money and he gives 100% of what he gets to charity. Mm-hmm. So, you're going to be feeding kids. And if you don't have the money, you work out with him, because I'm going to ask him if you talk to him. We're going to go on an honor system, but I want my crescent wrench back when I get it back. Our requirements are you got to have a crescent wrench, a hammer, a pair of pliers, a screwdriver set, gloves. That's a requirement. Steel toes is not necessarily a requirement, but it should be a requirement. A hard hat should be some sort of requirement also. Shorts is kind of depends on what you're doing. You shouldn't really have jeans, but all those things, all these safety gear you want to make sure you have. So, and your tools, it's better to have your own tools than using somebody else's, because if you're using somebody else's tools, it's the one that's crappy that they don't want to use. So, it's better to have your own, just because you'll be more familiar with it. And a crescent wrench, like I said, $5-6.
Yeah.
Yeah. You should be able to, I probably own, 20 or 30 crescent wrenches. Mm-hmm. And I probably bought in my life 100 of them. You lose one, you go and buy another one,
yeah.
Or two, just so mm-hmm. I've got 3 in my truck and 2 in my tool bag, like one stashed in my drawer in the booth at the war. I'm like, I use a crescent wrench all the time.
Yeah.
They have fancy crescent wrenches. I got a buddy who, you get a gimmicky crescent wrench, he's going to buy it. So, and you get these little ultimate tools, ratcheting.
Oh, the fast ratchets are my mm-hmm. favorite. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. I mean, if you're breaking a truss, the fast wrenches are the way to go.
Yeah.
You know.
A lot of employers have these rules of what is it that you need. And
yeah.
You just got to read those rules, because they are work rules. So you got to kind of follow those, or you could be terminated.
Yeah. Because it's a fun job, but it's a serious job. You know what I'm saying? We're, like you said earlier, we're working with a lot of heavy stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay, the carps, the rigging is not the only heavy stuff that we're dealing with. Okay, I've seen people lose a toenail almost just from pushing a case wrong. Mm-hmm. So
and a moving light. If you have to put a moving light on a truss, that moving light's anywhere from, I've seen them as little as 20 pounds to 105 pounds. Like, yeah, they're not light. During the Super Bowl, we had to move. Oh God, it was probably 60 lights down a couple flights of stairs, like downstairs, mm-hmm. to hang them on this truss. It took 4 people to carry each one of them down the stairs.
Jesus.
And
then you're not talking about the spots that you get to put all the way in the announcer booths all over the...
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. But
freight elevators down.
Oh yeah.
One of those days.
No, that's a constant thing that we deal with even at the War of them, is the elevators are down constantly. Oh my God. Because they're in use all the time. Mm-hmm. So things just break down all the time. So yeah, and then you got to carry them upstairs. That's not fun at all.
So something very important that I want to go into a little bit more that you also brought up about too is, working with people that are new to the industry. Mm-hmm. And it's not like they come in there with the intention of, well, I'm not going to work hard. There's some that just don't know. A lot of them are referrals, their friend or their boyfriend, husband, wife got them in kind of thing, And then
we are a community of nepotism. That is true. Yeah. Yeah.
So what would your advice be, to guiding these new people into the industry, especially like, during load in, or I should say load out, when you don't have enough time to explain everything, but you still want to have a sufficient in and out?
I think there's one thing that you could do is there's always going to be somebody on the crew. And this has been my experience in just about every crew I've worked on. There's always somebody on the crew that's willing to take someone new under and work with them. And I think the first, like, if you're coming in day one and, you need to say, hey, I'm new, I don't know much, but if you, I'm willing to learn anything, I could follow instructions. If you just give me somebody that could give me instructions, working with me so I could get it. If you start off the conversation like that, they're going to be like, great, you're together all day. instead of like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Will you give me somebody else? Because he's faking it, right?
Yeah.
So it's really, and there's things that you can learn, and there's various videos and stuff like that you can kind of watch on YouTube and stuff like that, but on how to do things. But I think the most important thing is if you don't know how to do something, ask for help. Hey, I don't quite know how to do this. Help me out.
Mm-hmm.
And and you have to be able to learn, right? You have to retain that information.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be first day Joe,
Yeah.
right? It's got to be every day is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Every day is you've learned something new, not something you were supposed to learn yesterday.
Yes.
If I've showed you something once, if I've showed you something twice, okay, I'll give you that. But if I have to show you it repeatedly, then I'm frustrated, and it's going to make me very, very frustrated, and it's going to make both of our days very long. Because now I'm going to watch everything you do like a hawk because you couldn't learn a very simple thing, right? So I think that's one of the things that having the ability to, the most important skill in being a stagehand is the ability to learn, because you're always going to be learning something. The world today is not the world it was 10 years ago. It's completely changed. We've had people that have been out of the business for 10 years, and they're having to learn stuff all over again because it's not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
We've got video walls now that we didn't have back then. We've got the LED lights that this world has changed drastically in 10 years.
Yeah, because lighting, y'all had the gel inserts in the par cans, and now you have LED everything.
Everything.
And you have the ones that you can just program individually. And then you have this whole. Please explain to me, explain to us all, what is dimmer beach? Because every time I have to move that thing,
okay, so
it is annoying.
Dimmer beach was always so. Back in the day, when you would go out on tour, they would always have to assign somebody to basically babysit the dimmer racks, because they would have to like repatch things in the middle of the show or whatever, because you could only use a certain amount of things. So, or there'd be a breaker that would constantly flip, so you just have to turn it back on. Because with the light, like if you have 2,500 watts of lights on a circuit, right? So when you plug into your wall, well, that's going to turn on. It's going to work, even though your circuit's only rated for 2,400 watts. It's going to turn on for a minute, then it's going to go off. Well, I only needed to blind the crowd, and then it's going to go off, and then we're going to turn. It's a fire hazard. We've kind of gotten away from that kind of stuff. But they used to park somebody at the dimmer world to repatch and to manage the dimmers during the show. And those people often had a drink and a lawn chair that they would sit and watch this thing. So it would be called Dimmer Beach. This is how it was explained to me. I could be totally wrong on this, but it's exactly how it was explained to me. Is it became Dimmer Beach because, there's a guy. Basically, the only thing he's not doing is in a straw hat and flip flops, sitting there watching, like hanging out.
Yeah.
He's at the beach. It's a day at the beach. It's a cushy gig. You're making 4-hour minimum to sit there and watch a dimmer rack. Great. There was a professor in a theater, or a teacher in a theater once that said, being a stagehand's great. You can make a lot of money doing a lot of different things. You can do a lot of different things, but sometimes you're on props and they just want you to sweep the floor. You're making $20 an hour to sweep the floor. You sweep the floor, no problem, right? You're paid $20 an hour to watch a dimmer, for 4 hours. So you're making $80 just to watch that dimmer for the night. That is a bless you.
Thank you.
That is a fantastic job to have, right? Like that's the one everybody wants, because they get to enjoy the music, enjoy the show. They're not actually working.
And they don't even have to push the dimmer beach rack over there.
Well, yeah. I mean, and it's different nowadays because we're no longer using dimmers, because it's LED. Everything is using a power source, not necessarily dimmers. Which dimmers, the way a dimmer is built is there's two like I'll just describe what an ETC dimmer looks like. So there's two breakers on it. The two breakers are connected to what are called chokes, which are about this big around, and they will have there'll be windings around. I think it's tungsten. Not tungsten. There's windings around, which what that does is in your curve, So it's a sine wave. So things, go like this. So when you dim something, it cuts it off. So the curve goes like this, right? And so it cuts it off. So there's a real hard point there. What the choke does is it helps round that off a little bit. And so high rise has more winds on it. So, and that copper weighs a lot of, there's a lot of weight to that. So dimmers are heavy. And the better quality dimmers, the heavier they are, because usually more windings. And then they go to from there it goes to what's called a solid state relay, which determines how much it's dimming and all that kind of stuff. It's a little electronic piece about this big, right? That's what controls a dimmer, or that's what determines how the dimmer works. Those sorts of things are, so, all of those things weigh a ton, and so the dimmer racks, they might only be 4.5 feet tall by 4.5 feet wide, 4.5 feet deep, but it's the heaviest thing on that truck.
Yeah.
And because there's 48 dimmers in there, or not 24 dimmers in something that big, plus all the cable for the patch panels and all that stuff. That's all copper. Copper's not light, but now they don't have to have those chokes and all that other stuff. It's now just contacts, and it's now just straight power. It's distribution. So now having more moving lights and LEDs, they're not having to have dimmers. So everything's getting lighter as far as that, as far as dimmer reach goes. The weight's going somewhere else because now the light is heavier. A Source 4 was 36 pounds. A Source 4 Lico is now 36 pounds, I think. But original Source 4 was 18, 16, something like that.
Wow.
Because all the electronics are now in the...
Oh, yeah, in the light
It's
fixture
all in the
itself.
light. So you're moving it off the floor into the air, right? So now our grids are going to have to handle more. But you don't have to hang a light with a scroller or a light with, you don't have to hang two lights to get the same spot to do two different colors. You now have one light that'll do that. So, so there's compromises and all that. It's pretty, like I said, the world changes, on a drastic basis in the past, 15 years, definitely. 10, it's just, when they started doing, my first LED that I got when I was at the Walnut was in 2014. No, 13. That's when we started buying the LEDs there. The Walnut it's the regional theater in Philadelphia. It's in Center City, Philadelphia, and it's the oldest theater in the country, operating theater in the country. And so they've been doing shows for 200 years there. And,
wow.
And I think they're on 210 at this point. 1809 is when they opened their doors.
Wow.
And I was the head electrician there for about 6 years. So we finally started getting LEDs and started doing away with the scrollers. Like the scroller companies don't exist anymore. What a scroller is, for those of you who are following along in the back of the room, is a string of gel. Gel is something that is made to go in front of the light to change the color. The scroller is a string of those gels put together, and then you give it a different value on the console, and it moves that gel forward and back to change the color. That's what a scroller is.
Okay.
So some places still have them, but the companies that made those things don't exist anymore. They're gone. So there's really people that are fixing them, but you can't get new ones. LED has replaced that stuff. And this is for 5 or 6 years this company's been gone. Like the companies that did this, they're gone. Like they just don't exist.
But I see it, and tell me if from your experience too. I see a lot of entertainers, sports, music alike, and that still like par cans, with the gels and things like. They just like the way it works, the way it looks.
Yeah, there's also some, I worked with the designer, and they told me that they don't like the LEDs because they can't get white light. But the problem isn't that they can't get white light from the LED, it's that their programmer can't color mix that color. Because we've been taught for so many years that when we're color mixing, we're doing subtractive color mixing. So your primary colors in lighting are what? You know this?
Red, yellow, blue.
Nope. That's in paint.
Oh, okay.
Lighting's different. Red, blue, green.
Okay.
RGB, right? Red, green, blue. however you want it, but red, blue, and green are your primary colors in lighting. So your secondary colors are amber or yellow, cyan, and magenta, right? So for many years for color mixing, they would use secondary mixing because it would be mixing after the source. So they would be taking the cyan and all this. So like cyan and yellow would make green, right? And then you take those, you take away the yellow and you add in the magenta, and it'll make, don't take away the yellow and add in the magenta, and it'll be blue. So it would also make it dimmer because there's two pieces of glass that's now going through, right? So now, and it's subtractive mixing. So it's secondary subtractive mixing. Now we're into the world of additive mixing, which is RGB. And now, some fixtures have 7 colors in them because they couldn't just quite get the right color. You can't, when you're mixing it, you can't get the same things that you could get with the CYM or CYM mixing. That's what we call it. And so they needed a little bit more of a different, like an indigo in there. So they had to get it to there, or the red's not quite right. So they need a red amber, So like now there's some that have 7 colors in them, or, you get a RGBA, RGBAW with so white. So they'll have a white chip in there just to give it more punch and get more pastels, because pastels are pretty hard to do with just RGB. But mixing, like if you turn all red, blue, and green all the way at full, it should be white, but it's not. It's more of a kind of a pinkish color. So you got to turn the red down to like 80%, and you got to turn the blue down just a little bit more, and to make your incandescent light, right? That's how you would do it. So that's how people, so people just don't, but it's never going to be what incandescent light is. So sometimes they just want that incandescent look. So that's how, a lot of times that's what you'll run into is the artist doesn't like the LED because it's not the right look. And it could be because the programmer can't color mix. Or it could be because they're never going to get the quality of light that they want out of it. So, but par cans, a lot of par cans, like you can't buy the big par 64s.
No.
The bulbs for those are gone. Like,
yeah.
It's impossible to get bulbs for those. So everything's like they're forcing it to go to LED.
Yeah. Yeah, no, people that have par cans, they're like taking care of them like infant childs, because they're still very popular, especially, in sporting events and things like that. I seen a lot of people like par cans as far as the eye could see. And I was just like, but me, if I'm on lighting and I'm doing par cans, I'm like, oh, I'll do lighting because you just got them on the bar. Just
Yeah.
like I'll hang par cans all day for you.
I'll never forget. I was doing a gig, and they were par 64s, which is the bigger par cans, and basically a par can is a coffee can with a headlight in it.
Yeah,
that's like, and you can fix it with a crescent wrench or a crescent hammer, whatever you want to call it. They get bent up, and you just kind of beat it back into shape, and you go on with your day. They're kind of robust, and they've been around for years. Well, we're striking the show, and I pick up 2 par cans in one hand and 2 par cans in the other, and I'm going to take them to, we're walking across the stage, and this person comes from, "You're working too fast. You got to slow down." And I'm like, man, these things weigh 6 pounds apiece. Like, man, I work at 1 speed. Don't tell me to slow down. Like, I'm not going to go faster. I'm not going to go slower. It's fine.
Oh my God.
If you think I'm making you look bad, I'm sorry, but it's 4 par cans, man. If this is a moving light, I'd ask for help. Like, yeah.
Bless your heart. That's all I can say is bless your heart.
Yeah. They wanted to stay longer. God knows what. But, some people are like that. Some people, one of the things, kind of going back to something earlier, when you're working, you're doing those sorts of things, and you're setting all that stuff down, you're building that stuff. One thing that upsets heads a lot is you've started for the day. What time is break? Or it's closer to break. What time are we breaking? We're breaking in a minute. We can't start that now because break's in 5 minutes. Start it, and then we'll finish. Like, stop asking what time break is and just work until they tell you to stop.
Yeah.
That's the best thing you could do, because then, like, And if the head happens to not be paying attention, you're like, oh, hey, carpenter's going on break. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry. You know, and then that's a different story.
Yeah.
But like, hey, I don't want to start this because break's going to start in 15 minutes. That generally tends to upset heads because they're just like, man,
You know, we're on a schedule.
well, not necessarily that. It's more of it just shows that you don't really want to work.
Yeah.
Why did you come to work today?
Right.
Right? There's somebody sitting at home that wants to work today. And if you don't want to work, why did you come to work? A friend of mine told me years ago, you know, if you were happier working at McDonald's, go work at McDonald's. Why are you doing this? You know, if you're not happy doing this job, you shouldn't be here because it's never going to get better. Like, this is the job,
Yeah.
right? So it's going to be long hours. It's going to be, you know, there's going to be times where you're sitting doing nothing, but there's going to be times where you got to do a lot of stuff in 30 seconds,
Yeah.
you know? And, you know, I'll never forget, you know, I watched this guy, you know, he was in one arm. I think this was Sesame Street Live. It was in the 90s. His arm was cut off like here. So he had like a hook on his hand. And he outworked everybody. And talk about park hands. Most of their rig was park hands. He climbed up this truss with one arm, like threw the hook over his arm, climbed up the truss, focused that whole rig, because we had 5 minutes left before break, focused the whole rig, and then came down and was like, before coffee.
Wow.
And was, you know, he was like, oh, I could do this. And we're like, no way. We should have put money on it, man, because he'd have made a fortune.
Wow.
5 minutes, focused that whole leg of the truss.
Yeah.
And I mean, because he was just like boom, 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 boom. Like he basically just walked from one end to the other, just tilting them and, you know, moving a little bit and just, I don't think he even ever turned them on. Then they turned them on and they're all dead on. It's like, this is unbelievable.
Wow.
That's a stagehand.
Yes. Seriously. Seriously.
You know, that's a stagehand right there. So, you know, that's something that, you know, you get jobs done very quickly. And, you know, your park hands and your stuff like that are old school and jobs. And it was an easier world then. Now you got to know how to focus a light. That's a different world. So it's not as easy as it once was.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today,
Yeah.
man, and sharing this wealth of knowledge with us.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
I mean, I can talk about this all day, but I mean, I know these folks on YouTube got an attention span like a goldfish, but
Yeah.
we're going to have to continue this in an episode 2, 3, 4, because like I could just go swimming in this rabbit hole.
It's cool. Yeah, it's fun. I can do this more often. It's a lot of fun.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do you have any last bit of advice for the listeners?
Yeah, you know, if you want to be a stagehand, you know, go talk to your local union about doing it. We're starting apprenticeship programs. We got some money through the county of the Harris County, and we're going to actually try to start an actual apprenticeship program. You know, start contacting the office to try to get in there and start working, because you know the industry needs workers right now, and there's a bunch of different avenues to do that. You know, so if you want to work and make a living doing stage work, you know, contact the union and the local 51 here in Houston, and come and see us and fill out an application to start working, and we'll probably get put on work pretty quick because everybody needs work. You know, there's a shortage of stagehands right now, and you know, come and see us. You know, I'm sure you'll get to work, especially if you got a good attitude. You'll work a lot. You know, so yeah, that's what I got.
Well, you heard it from the gentleman yourself, okay? There is work out there, okay? There's plenty of it, you know? If you got passion, if you love what you do, man, and you got a good attitude, and you can work with people, leave the ego at home, you need to be a stagehand or a tech, you know? Starting out as a stagehand, and then who knows where you can go. This industry is huge. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us this week, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Peace.